What's up, shitters and shitettes? Today I'm here to talk about UFC 300. I know I've been gone for a few weeks, but I'm back. I'm better. And UFC 300, I have my predictions. I know that there's a few fighters that people believe are going to be on the card. We don't know at this point what the card is going to look like, but I have my ideal card, and what I want you to do is be sure to like, subscribe, and be sure to comment what you believe are the key fights for UFC 300 and what should be on the card, who should be on the card, and what you think about my picks. So let's get right to it, guys. At this point in time, it's December 29th, 2023. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. We have three confirmed fights. Jiri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic, light heavyweight division. Then we have Aljamain Sterling making his featherweight debut against Calvin Kattar. Then we have, of course, Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. What I think is important here is that it's been confirmed that these are preliminary fights, which is absolutely bananas. I mean, Jiri Prochazka and Aljamain Sterling just fought title fights for their last fight, and now they're walking into the prelims. I think it's bananas, but it's what we want from UFC 300. So I'm going to include these three fights in my perfect card, and I just want you to let me know what you think. So starting off, I'm going to go early prelims. You know, I think everybody has to be in the top 10 of any division. They have to be contender fights or title fights. I think that's what the delivery is going to be. And just for the sake of McGregor coming back, or the idea of him coming back, I'm leaving Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler for my main event at the very top, which you're going to see right here. But we're going to start with the early prelims and how I would set up this fight card. Starting off, Josh Emmett versus Giga Chikadze. I think that fight was supposed to happen. It got canceled for UFC 296. I'm all over it. I love it. A lot of action. Next up, I love it. I think it makes sense. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Marvin Vettori, I'm not saying he's coming off of, his ascend to contendership, but I do think he has somewhat of a decline, and I think Brendan Allen is coming up to take that place. I'm not saying Marvin Vettori is some sort of a journeyman, but I just think it's a really good matchup. I think it's perfect for the early prelims. Next up, we're going to do with one of the confirmed fights. We have Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. I think that's a fun fight, but I think it's very early prelims when we're talking about the criteria for UFC 300. We want excitement. We want contenders. We want something that means something. I think Bo Nickal's up and coming, but I think he's still a few fights away from really being in those talks. And then Cody Brundage, I think, is a great matchup that Dana White came up with because he's been finishing everybody in the first round. Now we start off the prelims. So we have those three fights, early prelims. Now we got four fights for the prelims. This is what I came up with. Let me know below. Khamzat Chimaev versus Jared Cannonier. Khamzat Chimaev versus Jared Cannonier in the middleweight division. Khamzat Chimaev just moved up to the middleweight division, only fought Kamaru Usman. We have Jared Cannonier, which in my opinion deserves a title shot. I think his performances have not been lackluster per se, but I think it's not what they're looking for as far as excitement goes. I think it's perfect. Again, the up-and-comer versus the established guy who's ready for another title shot. I think the winner of that fight should get the next title shot, but you let me know what you think below. So that's our start to the prelims. Then we have Merab Dvalishvili versus Henry Cejudo. Merab Dvalishvili not doing much right now, just kind of stationary. Good grappler, a lot of stamina versus, of course, the legend Henry Cejudo, who just fought Aljamain Sterling, got kind of out of that ring rust. But why not put these two contenders of the bantamweight division head to head in the prelims? I think it's a beautiful idea. Next two fights are already confirmed. I'm going back to the Aljamain Sterling versus Calvin Kattar. I think it's a fun fight. It's definitely a statement for Aljamain Sterling to make his debut in the featherweight division. I think there's a lot to offer in that fight, so I love it right there. It's the co-main event of the prelims, per se. Prelim main event, we're going back to a confirmed fight. We're going Jiri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic in the light heavyweight division. I think that's great. Again, the fact that these are prelim fights are absolutely insane. I mean, I just mentioned like three beautiful main events for fight nights, maybe four. Be careful with five. Like this card is just absolutely ridiculous. So up to this point, I have my prelims and early prelims, and then now we have the main card, and I really want you to nitpick here. I wanted title fights. I wanted excitement. I wanted anything that makes sense. Again, I want to let you know that I didn't include individuals who already have scheduled fights. I'm trying to make this live and real, like real possibilities of fights that could happen. So I did exclude people who are contenders who I would have put in here, but already have scheduled fights too close to UFC 300. So let's start off. Starting off the main card, Dustin Poirier. He wants to come back against Arman Tsarukyan, someone who's proved himself to be an exciting, dangerous fighter in the lightweight division. That's our only non-title fight that I have coming up. I think it's great. I think that's a really exciting fight. Next up, Justin Gaethje versus Islam Makhachev. I love it. I know this would be Justin's third chance, but he's proved himself every time he comes back from a title fight. I love Justin Gaethje. He has the BMF belt. I know doesn't mean much against Islam Makhachev. I think it's a fun fight, and for it to be the second fight of the main card, I mean, come on, just absolutely bananas. Next up, a heavyweight fight. Yes, Tom Aspinall just became champ, but there's really no one coming back. Stipe's not going to fight. John Jones isn't fighting anytime soon. We have a lot of guys who are mixing and matching from the 6 to 10. I love the idea of Cyril Gane versus Tom Aspinall for the heavyweight belt. It rings in my ear. I freaking love it. I think it's a great matchup. I think it's a perfect third fight for the main card. Again, let me know what you think. Now, we already know about Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor at welterweight, by the way, for the actual main event. But what could be such a huge co-main event that would drive everybody crazy? And there was talks about bringing back Nate Diaz. There was talks about Nick Diaz even having Tony in this card. A whole bunch of different things that I think doesn't really make sense. And yes, I left females out. It's just what I thought was appropriate for something as big as UFC 300. Hate me for it. The only individual I think who should be in there from the women's division is Zhang Weili. I didn't add her, but it would have been my next fight, and I can see it happening at UFC 300. But moving on, the final fight, what I think would really sell to the fans, what really makes sense as far as mixed martial arts goes, a trilogy fight. And this time they're moving up. They're 1-1 in mixed martial arts. I want you to count everything else, put everything else aside. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira for the third time. And it should be at the light heavyweight division. I think it would be absolutely huge. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I think it'll make the most sense for the fans. So guys, let's run through this card. Josh Emmett versus Giga Chikadze. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. Hamza Chimaev versus Jared Cannonier. Merab Devlashvili versus Henry Cejudo. Aljamain Sterling versus Calvin Kattar. Jiri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. Dustin Poirier versus Arman Tsarukyan. Justin Gaethje versus Islam Makhachev. Cyril Gane versus Tom Aspinall. Israel Adesanya versus Pereira 3. And of course, the main event, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor. I think I freaking lost my mind doing this. Let me know what you think. Be sure to subscribe. I'm the MMA Casual. Love you all.